Chapter 3016 Reason to Try. Eventually, the concert was over. Gale received a thunderous applause and left the stage after a deep bow and a heartfelt speech expressing his hope to meet his fans in the dream realm one day. By the time he finished speaking, countless people in the audience were openly sobbing. Kai seemed a little down, as well. Sunny hesitated for a few moments, then gestured toward the curtain. I think you should go and congratulate him, anyway. The guy is leaving for a whole new world, a deadly world full of inconceivable monsters, no less. Past grudges or not, he'll feel better knowing that he has a friend there. Kai remained silent for a bit, then nodded slowly. Yes, I probably should. But not immediately, there is a whole ceremony to these things, you know. Plenty of famous people in the audience today, so they will all go backstage now. Unless they say at least a couple of words, they will be seen as rude. Then he'll have to thank the crew, the band, and the dancers. Then have a conversation with the managers. I'll go after that. Sunny was reminded that Kai could see through the curtain, and through the walls, as well. So, he was probably looking at what Gale was doing right now. He shifted uncomfortably, trying to hide the fact that the oppressive force trying to expel him from the waking world was almost unbearable now. Almost, but not quite. He could still stay for a bit. Sunny leaned back and sighed. I met Jet before coming here. She has resigned from the government, did you know? Kai nodded. Yeah, we talked. Sunny blinked a couple of times. Huh, why was I the last one to find out? Kai looked at him and smiled. It's just that we are in similar situations, she and I. Sunny frowned slightly. How so? Kai remained silent for a bit, then shrugged. Well, you know, the fourth nightmare awaits, he sighed. Actually, we've been talking about it for a long while. Jet has been preparing a replacement for the past year, and I didn't really have to. Truth be told, I don't have a lot to do in Ravenheart these days. Why do you think I was able to come here on such a busy day? Sunny scratched the back of his head. I didn't think about it at all, to be honest. I often forget that not everybody has 7 bodies at their disposal. Kai chuckled. That's something. But yes, despite the fact that people still call me the Steward of the West, in truth, my presence there has been redundant for quite a while. Ever since the plague, I think. He shook his head. Sishin has the situation under control. And she is much more embedded in the former song domain than I am. She has her sisters, as well, and they are managing things fine. Kai scratched his nose. And things are awkward between us, sadly. Sunny looked away. He knew what Kai had gone through during the Dreamspawn plague. But actually, Sishin had gone through the same horrid thing as well, and it was difficult to say who had been hurt by the experience more. Being tortured was definitely a terrible experience, but was it worse than having your mind stolen and torturing someone against your will? It was hard to say. The situation was only made worse by the fact that Kai had a messy relationship with the Song sisters. So, it was no surprise that things were awkward between them. Sunny remained silent for a few moments, then asked in a neutral tone. What about Morgan? The two of you were close. Kai shook his head. Morgan returned to Bastion, so, we don't see each other much. Sunny sighed. So, the fourth nightmare. You have decided, then? Kai nodded. I hesitated for a long time. But eventually, I made up my mind. Sunny felt both relieved and anxious. He lingered for a short while, then asked. So what made you decide? Kai chuckled. You. He leaned back and looked at Sunny with a smile. It was something you said in Ariel's game. But also, I am sorry, Sunny, but I don't think that you have an objective understanding of what the fourth nightmare is. And how abnormal you and Nephies are. That was what helped me decide. Sunny blinked a couple of times, then raised an eyebrow. What? Why am I abnormal, all of a sudden? Kai chuckled and shook his head. You just never stop to consider if things are possible. No, rather, you do not understand that things that are possible for you are not possible for everyone else. You are so powerful that your entire perception of power is skewed, Sunny. One day, a long time ago, you decided to pursue strength, and in your mind, it's just a question of luck and effort, of success or failure. Sunny was confused. Of course it is. What else can it be? Kai smiled. What I am trying to say, Sunny, is that the path of ascension is not a straight road. You succeed, and succeed, and succeed, until you fail and die. That is how you see it, but that is not how it is. For most people, success is simply not an option. Their paths are shorter than yours. Most awakened will never become masters, and most masters will never become saints. And among the saints, almost no one will ever become supreme. Not for the lack of effort, but simply because it's not in their nature. He looked into the concert hall, where the audience was slowly flowing toward the exits. You once mentioned that even in ancient times, supremes were exceedingly rare, so much so that the emergence of a new supreme completely changed the hierarchy of all mortal realms. But we, children of the age of the nightmare spell, are spoiled. Our world has already given birth to 8 supremes, and we are preparing to create more. Sunny frowned. I still don't understand what you are getting at, Kai. Kai's smile dimmed a little. I am saying that the pool of people who even have a chance to become supreme is limited, Sunny, and more than that, it is almost exhausted. There's barely a handful of those who are qualified to try left, and there won't be more. If humanity survives long enough to have a new generation, that generation will be weaker than ours, not stronger. So, Kai shrugged. The mere fact that I am one of those who have a chance is reason enough to try. In fact, it's imperative that I try. I wouldn't be able to live with myself, knowing that I wasted my potential despite how scarce potential is. His smile disappeared. Plus, I tasted enough powerlessness in my life, Sunny. I want to be powerful, too. I want to reshape the world according to what I want it to be. I dare to try. He laughed quietly. The world and we need to have a conversation. I am going to scold the world for being so heartless, and for that, I need to become someone whom the world will listen to. So, the 4th nightmare. I've decided to abandon objectivity and be abnormal, too. Sunny studied him for a while, then let out a quiet scoff. Buddy, you should have just said that you want to be like me. I mean, who can blame you? I am pretty awesome, after all. Even I want to be like me, all 7 of me, no less. Kai closed his eyes for a moment, shook his head, and then rose from his seat. The scariest thing is that I know that you are telling the truth. You always do. So, I think I am going to go see Gale now. Thank you for coming with me, though. Chapter 3017 Stronghold of Humanity. Sunny fled the waking world and escaped the unbearable pressure of its draconian laws. At the same time, a different incarnation of him moved from shadow to shadow, slowly scaling the walls of the castle. There were thousands of excited people crowding its many courtyards, and the sun was high in the sky, illuminating the sprawling vista of Bastion. Bastion had always been the most prominent human settlement in the dream realm. It had been the first foothold humanity had established in the frightening world of the nightmare spell, connecting the isolated citadels located in its heartland both to each other and to the Stormsia. And even if the basin of the River of Tears developed swiftly later on, Bastion never lost its exalted status. After Godgrave, it became the seat of Immortal Flame's power as well. But it was only today that Sunny felt that he was looking at the greatest stronghold of humanity, at its beating heart. The ivory tower drifted among the clouds above the Mirror Lake. Some distance away, on the other side of the castle, the night garden cast a shadow on its battlements. And somewhere far away, the brilliant Dream Gate towered above the lively streets. Today was a special day when the Dream Gate connected Bastion to Ravenheart. People could travel freely between the 2 great citadels, ostensibly turning them into one colossal city. Mundane people, awakened, echoes, enthralled nightmare creatures, all of them flooded the streets, serving as an unmistakable reminder of how powerful humanity had grown. The 4 great citadels seemed to have become one, lending their immense weight to that feeling of strength. Looking at it, one could just believe that humanity could really withstand the apocalypse. Ah, damn it! On top of the main keep of the castle, Effie was standing alone on a secluded rampart, her tall figure contoured beautifully against the brilliant sky. When Sunny arrived, she was engaged in a strange ritual. There was a scattering of small white balls on the stones in front of her, and she was holding an odd alloy weapon in her hand, not quite a war hammer, but not quite a mace either. As Sunny emerged from the shadows, she swung the weapon in a graceful arc and sent one of the balls flying into the sky with a thunderclap. The ball glistened like a tiny meteor and disappeared into the distance, never to be seen again. Sunny stared at all that with a confused expression. Who are you trying to kill? And why are you using such a strange method? Effie inhaled deeply, then turned to him and smiled. Hey, Sunny. She used her odd weapon to roll another ball into position and looked into the distance. I am not trying to kill anyone. Just trying to relax. This here is an ancient ceremony from before the dark times, something called golf. I read in a book that people performed it to relax. Sunny raised an eyebrow. Really? So what's the purpose of this ceremony? Effie hesitated. To get the ball into a small hole, I guess. Wait. She opened her mouth, her eyes glinting with mischievous light, but then just sighed. Ah, forget it. There are no golf holes in Bastion, so I am trying to get the balls into the Stormzia instead. Sunny looked into the distance. There are hundreds of kilometers between Bastion and the Stormzia. Effie grinned. Exactly. With that, she swung her club again, producing another thunderclap. The ball disappeared behind the horizon. Effie watched it fly away, then shrugged. Honestly, I sort of get it. I don't think that the goal even matters. It just feels nice to give something a good whack sometimes. Wait, she opened her mouth again, but then just shook her head again. Wanna try? Sunny considered it for a moment. Could he get the ball into the Stormzia? Honestly, it was not impossible. He had bombarded the winter beast with heavy javelins from at least 20 kilometers away as a saint. He wasn't a saint anymore, and the golf balls were way lighter than those javelins had been. So, there was no telling how far they would fly. They would undoubtedly fly over Rivergate, though, which meant that he did not run the risk of killing someone by accident. Sure, why not? Sunny took the golf club from Effie, chose a ball, prepared for a few moments, and whacked it with all his titanic strength. The ball disintegrated with a loud boom, and the club exploded into a cloud of metal shrapnel. Effie laughed. Oh, right, I forgot to say. The fun part is trying to find the right balance between a forceful whack and I think I'll stop here. Anyway, it's a good exercise for learning how to precisely control your strength. In fact, I stumbled onto this whole thing when coming up with ways to train Dumpling, back when he couldn't control his transcendent strength yet. Sunny stared at Effie somberly for a while, then asked in a dark tone. What's wrong with you? Effie blinked a couple of times. What do you mean? He shook his head. That was what? At least 4 flawless openings for a dirty joke. And you just ignored them completely. Where is the real Effie, and what have you done to her? Effie remained silent for a little while, then looked away. The real Effie just wants to whack some balls in peace. Sunny smiled. Sorry for breaking your club, then. She gave him a long look and chuckled. Are you joking? I did mention that I made this for little Ling, did I not? I had 400 of them made, and he only destroyed half of them. With that, Effie leaned down and pulled another club from a storage memory. Now, then, let's get the next one into the Stormzia, for sure. She sent another ball into the sky and sighed in satisfaction, looking at the sprawling city below them. Hey, Sunny, did you know that Bastion is larger than NQSC now? Effie leaned on the club. NQSC has a way larger population, but it is also built vertically. Most buildings have countless floors both above and below ground. Bastion, however, is mostly horizontal. So, it covers much more ground, an immense amount of ground, really. She pointed southward, and despite our tram system, the bicycles, the eco-rickshaws, and the ferries, traveling from one part of the city to another still takes too much time. Around half of the people living in the south have never been to the northern reaches of Bastion. In fact, they have not even been to every district in the south. And despite the fact that a constant torrent of settlers is leaving Bastion for other citadel cities, the population is still growing, which brings its own swarm of problems. Effie looked down. What I am trying to say is that we are at capacity. We are way past it, actually, and there are still billions of people who need to be settled somewhere in the dream realm. That's pretty bad. Sunny lingered for a short while. Yeah, I know, of course I do, but why are you telling me this now? Effie shrugged. Just to illustrate why I am here swinging a club. This is the kind of problem we are facing today. Effie sighed and rolled the next ball into position. So, challenging the nightmare seems trivial in comparison, doesn't it? She raised the club, remained motionless for a moment, and then lowered it with a heavy sigh. It should seem trivial, but it doesn't. Chapter 3018 Oh Children. Sunny studied Effie for a short while. She had long recovered from the harrowing starvation forced upon her by the dreamspawn, looking as hale and brimming with vitality as ever. Her figure was just as outstanding as it had always been, her skin was dewy and supple, and her eyes were bright and clear. However, there was a shadow hiding in their depths, one that had not been there before. Sunny hesitated, then manifested a similar kind of club to hers. Walking over to stand over one of the balls, he asked, "Shall we compete to see who can hit a ball further?" Effie gave him a dubious look. There's no way to see where they fall, though. How are we going to judge the winner? Sunny scratched the back of his head. Even the vast reach of his shadow sense was not enough for that purpose. He could potentially send one of his incarnations or shadows to the shores of the Stormsia, but that felt like too much hassle. Whatever, let's just whack some balls, then. He remembered how Effie had done it and swung the club. This time, it did not shatter. Sadly, the ball still exploded. Sunny sighed. Damn. Effie laughed and swung hers, then watched her ball streak across the sky with satisfaction. Sunny spoke in a neutral tone. Everyone seems inclined to talk about the fourth nightmare today. Jet, Kai, now you, too. Effie shrugged. Well, today is Remembrance Day. It has been a year since the end of the plague, and the immediate fires caused by it have been put out. Now, for the first time, we have time to look to the future instead of focusing on how to deal with the fallout of the past. So it's only natural that everyone is thinking about the nightmare. Sunny lingered a bit. You seem to be in a bad mood. She shook her head. Not bad, just, there's a lot to consider, I guess. Effie studied the vista of the Bastion. Do you know that people in Bastion almost never have nightmares? Not in the past year, at least. As a result, we are doing much better than all other cities. Crime is down, productivity is up, the same goes for most other parameters. That's how important good sleep is, I guess, especially when the entire species is dealing with a recent trauma. She glanced at Sunny and smiled a little. And it's all because of that horse of yours. Ever since it settled in the real Bastion, things like that keep happening. That's the impact one supreme creature can make. So, how can I not be thinking about the fourth nightmare? Sunny remained silent for a long while, considering his words carefully. In the end, he said, no one is forcing you to challenge it, Effie. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. She chuckled and looked at him with humorous sparks glistening in her hazel eyes. Sunny, did you ever want to challenge a nightmare? He could not help but scoff. What? Of course not. It was just that the circumstances forced me to, still forcing me, actually. I would much rather live somewhere comfortably without the need to risk getting killed. Effie sent another ball flying with a loud thunderclap. There you go, then. The world is ending, Sunny, and I have a lot to lose. So, I am quite motivated to grow as powerful as I can and prevent it from falling apart completely. It's deeply ironic, don't you think? As Sunny shrugged, unsure what to say, Effie sighed. She stared at the scattered balls for a while, then spoke in a quiet tone. Sunny, you were 7 when your mother died, weren't you? He was surprised by the question. After looking at her silently for a while, Sunny nodded. Yes. Why are you asking? Effie grimaced and rolled another ball closer to herself. Ling is 7. Actually, he's turning 8 soon. So, that's why. How long are we going to spend in the nightmare? A year, maybe. 2 years, nobody knows. And while I have no intention of dying, there's a distinct possibility that I will. So I might miss a huge chunk of his childhood, or even all of it, if worst comes to worst. She swung her club, only to see it snap in half. Effie grimaced, tossed the bent handle down, and cursed quietly. Sunny studied her for a few moments, then sighed and looked away. He struck a ball, finally managing to send it flying without destroying either it or the club. The corner of his lip twisted upward in satisfaction. Little Ling and I are completely different. Sunny looked at Effie and smiled. I was all alone, while he is surrounded by a swarm of people who love him and care about him. So, there's no comparison at all. Effie exhaled slowly. I know. Don't misunderstand me, Sunny, I am not hesitating. In truth, I have already decided to go into the nightmare during our odd adventure in Mirage City. You see, missing a part of his childhood feels terrible, but I have to make sure that he even gets to have a childhood first. Unlike the two of us, who barely got to be children. She looked at the city below and raised a hand, as if trying to hold it in her palm. There are countless children in Bastion, Sunny. I want to make sure that none of them has to be in a rush to grow up. Effie paused for a moment and then chuckled. Actually, I am not worried about my dumpling that much. If anything, I worry about his dad more. How is he going to handle a transcendent rascal alone? You'll have to help him a lot while I'm gone, doofus. Sunny smiled. He wondered how far his ball had already reached. That's Uncle Doofus, thank you very much. How is that guy doing, by the way? Effie hesitated for a moment. He doesn't remember what happened, so he's fine. Actually, he's not fine. He saw what state I was in back then, and I think that left a mark on him. So, He's completely focused on achieving natural ascension now. He and Aiko have a competition to see who can become a master first. Crazy times we live in, right? Natural ascension, who could have thought? She smiled. Hey, Sunny, do you remember, back on the Forgotten Shore, I once told you that the dream realm is a paradise? He nodded. I do. I mean, how could I have forgotten something so nonsensical? Effie chuckled, then inhaled deeply. Now, I don't think that it's a paradise, it's not a paradise yet. She picked up another club and rolled a ball closer. But I think we can make it into one, if we really try. We will probably fail, but we won't know unless we try, will we? Sunny opened his mouth to answer, but at that moment, the spell suddenly whispered into his ear. It said, "You have slain a fallen monster, undetectable forest maw." He froze for a moment, then glanced at his club. Noticing his expression, Effie raised an eyebrow. What? Sunny remained silent for a moment, then smiled. Oh, I think I won our competition, that's all. Chapter 3019 Seance. 3019 Seance. Effie sighed. Damn cheater. As she did, the two of them heard the sound of hurried steps rushing toward the secluded rampart. She winced and kicked one of the balls lightly. I guess that's my cue. I am supposed to be at the waterfront in a short while, welcoming the gathered crowd and warming them up before Neffis takes the stage. My subordinates love nothing more than parading me in front of people. Something about making their blood flow faster. She glanced at Sunny and asked, "Did you find me just to chat, or did you want something?" Sunny shrugged. No real reason. I guess I wanted to know if you are joining me for Cassie's thing. If so, I would have caught a ride in your shadow. Getting there by myself is a hassle, considering how thorough the defensive array is. Effie shook her head. What's the point of my going there? It's not exactly my field of expertise. Sunny grinned. Fast-flowing blood is a bit of a universal advantage, though. He grimaced and then took a step into the shadows. Well, see you later then. Oh, this ceremony. Golf. I liked it. Hit me up if you ever want a rematch. Just a moment before Effie's attendant appeared on the rampart, Sunny dissolved into the shadows. He traveled through their dark embrace and appeared in the grove of ancient trees that rustled quietly in celestial winds. The Ivory Island had been turned into a sorceress fortress in the past year, its components intertwined with a layered defensive array to prevent anyone from entering the Tower of Hope uninvited, or leaving it without the permission of its master. So, Sunny could not use Shadow Step freely here anymore. Still, it did not take him long to make it to where he wanted to go. He simply hid in the shadow of a scholar hurrying across the emerald grass and followed him into a spacious chamber inside the ivory tower. There, a group of people was gathered, standing in the shadows along the wall. They were men and women from all walks of life, both mundane and awakened, sorcerers, engineers, linguists, the few remaining spellsmiths of the fallen clan Valor were here, as well as the most prominent spelltech pioneers. Sunny even noticed a couple of river people, easily recognizable by their garments. You are here. Cassie was standing in the middle of the chamber, in front of a complicated runic circle. Bright sunlight poured through the windows and illuminated her breathtaking figure, her hair glistening like liquid gold. Hiding in the shadows in the corners of the chamber, Sunny answered with a thought. I am. He hesitated, then asked in a curious tone. Why are you doing this today, though? Everyone else is taking a break. Ahead of him, Cassie sighed and raised her head. Because getting all these people into one room was far easier today. Sunny gave her a mental nod. That was a good enough reason, as far as he was concerned. In the center of the room, Cassie inhaled deeply and then addressed the gathered luminaries. Thank you all for attending. You already know what is about to happen and why, so I won't repeat myself. Be alert. I don't know how long my essence will last, so every moment is precious. After the hum of whispers died down, she turned to the runic circle and placed her hand on the hilt of the quiet dancer. A cold wind blew across the chamber, and by the time it ceased, there was a man standing in the runic circle. Sunny studied him with keen interest. The man was of a modest stature, his posture slightly bent. He wore a strange garment woven out of green fabric, while his wrists and ankles were adorned with golden bracelets. His skin was dark, and his hair was hidden under an embroidered head covering. He was leaning on an iron staff, looking around with intelligent, penetrating eyes. Cassie bowed slightly. Welcome. I am Cassia, Song of the Fallen. The gaze of the man lingered for a moment on the dark corner where Sunny was hiding, then shifted to Cassie. He spoke in a low, curious tone. How peculiar. A beautiful blind goddess is visiting my dream, or am I visiting her dream? The spell translated his words, but Sunny could tell that he was talking in an odd and unfamiliar dialect. It was difficult to understand, but not impossible, not that there was a need to. The man turned his head, looking at the blue sky beyond the windows. His eyes narrowed slightly. I am not dreaming of Micklin, then. Indeed, the man was a native of Godgrave, one of the many memories of whom Cassie had inherited when she received her aspect legacy. Cassie nodded. Nor are you dreaming. I have summoned the memory of you from the depths of time. And once our bargain is over, you will cease to exist, becoming a memory once more. The man chuckled. If that is the case, you have nothing to bargain with. Lady Cassia, Song of the Fallen. After all, if all that awaits me is oblivion, then there is nothing I would want. Cassie slowly shook her head. Not oblivion, remembrance. She hesitated for a moment, then added. I do not think that a man like you cares about being remembered, though. However, what about curiosity? The man raised an eyebrow. Curiosity? Cassie smiled faintly. If you agree to my demands, I will satiate your curiosity. Inti of Micklin, child of the sun. Thousands of years have passed since the time you were born in the bones of the Sun Killer, after all. Aren't you interested in learning what happened in those years? What sorceries have been created, and what feats we of the flame have performed? He smiled. Sounds enticing, indeed, but the bargain depends on what you want from me. What can a humble transcendent offer a mighty supreme? Cassie studied him intently and then said in a quiet tone. You were the sorcerer who created the Asuras, the enchanted suits of armor that the awakened of Micklin wore to battle beings far more powerful than them. That is what my people require, as well. She inhaled deeply. I want you to teach me how to build Asuras. Chapter 3020 Legendary Guests. Cassie's supreme ability was as powerful as it was versatile. It was not, perhaps, as powerful as the ability to make all warriors of humanity many times more difficult to kill, creating a vast quasi-immortal army, or an ability to raise an ever-expanding legion of undying shadows. But it could enhance the power of humanity in other, more subtle ways. It could grant humanity knowledge. And knowledge was the origin of power, after all. Over the past year, Cassie had used her aspect to manifest a number of prominent saints of the ancient past into reality. She was relying on the memories granted to her by her aspect legacy to remember them, so there were plenty of outstanding candidates to choose from. Sadly, her reserves of essence were not endless, so she could not maintain the manifestation for too long. Depending on the being she was manifesting, the summoning could persist from a day to just several hours. After that, she had to spend days slowly recovering her spirit essence. Not all of the individuals she manifested were willing to cooperate, either. In fact, most of them were not, at least during the first few summonings. Cassie had an unlimited number of opportunities to try convincing them, though, only constrained by time and resource commitment. Sometimes, she managed to convince the legendary heroes of the past to share their knowledge. Sometimes, they proved to be too stubborn, prompting her to shift her focus to a different memory. There was, of course, a third option. She could simply force her way into their minds and reap all the knowledge she wanted there, leaving devastation in her wake. But Cassie chose not to abandon diplomacy in favor of violence and coercion, not only because of her values, but also because she was wary of eroding her moral boundaries, one act of tyranny at a time. Cassie was afraid to wake up one day and realize that she had become no different from torment. Even more than that, she was afraid of not even being capable of realizing what she had become. That was the curse of those who were demigods. At that level of power, identity ceased to be something one simply possessed and became a fragile resource that had to be meticulously guarded. It was too easy to lose oneself to power, to be corrupted by it, becoming something unrecognizable. So, Cassie had to adhere to rules and principles she had formulated for herself, staying within the bounds of what she deemed right. Even then, her efforts had brought a wealth of new knowledge and skills to humanity. Most of the legendary figures she manifested were unwilling to share their secrets, but some were, and what they taught her was invaluable. Humanity had made a leap in its understanding of various mystical disciplines, especially runic sorcery and forging. There was a lot of knowledge that could have helped the human domain augment its civil engineering efforts in the dream realm, thus allowing more settlers to arrive across the realm boundary. But mostly, Cassie focused on learning knowledge tied to warfare. After all, humanity was swiftly barreling toward the apocalypse. Soon enough, the waking world was going to be destroyed, and all the citadel cities in the dream realm were going to be besieged by endless tides of nightmare creatures. Humanity had to use every opportunity there was to grow as strong as possible, as soon as possible. The secret knowledge Cassie delivered to the brightest minds of humanity, combined with the knowledge the river people shared with them freely, caused a quiet explosion of progress and innovation. Even though not many people realized it yet, there was a true scientific revolution happening behind the curtain, if sorcery and mysticism could be called science, of course. That mystical revolution was simply hidden behind a far more evident and widespread flood of innovation caused by the mass exodus from the waking world, with millions of people working day and night to rebuild civilization in the dire reaches of the dream realm. That was why various luminaries, sorcerers, scientists, and engineers had gathered in the ivory tower today, and why Inti of Mictlan was standing in the runic circle at the moment. As for the runic circle itself, its purpose was to protect the audience from the manifested legends of the past. After all, not all of those Cassie summoned responded well to finding themselves in an unfamiliar world, away from everything they knew, and to learning that they were not themselves but, instead, a manifested memory of a long-dead person. Luckily, Inti of Mictlan seemed to be different, which was a great boon, since learning how to build the Asuras was an issue of great importance for the human domain. That secret alone could amplify its battle power twofold, or even more, depending on how difficult they were to build. Hearing Cassie's request, he chuckled. "Ah, the Asuras, why, you are correct in suggesting that I am a very curious man, dream goddess. However, you are mistaken if you think that it was I who created the Asuras. I merely perfected them." He shook his head with a wistful sigh. The Asuras were originally created by the Ash nomads, those few who traveled the Sea of Ash, hiding from the White Abyss in its depths. Eventually, all their tribes and clans were wiped out, and the scattered survivors found shelter in Mictlan. My mother was of the Ash, so I inherited some knowledge from her, enough to understand the crude art of building the Asuras, at least, and develop an ambition to improve upon their design. Sunny listened to his words with interest, wondering if the Asuras could really be replicated. The ones he had fought were as powerful as great abominations, but that was because they had spent thousands of years being consumed by corruption. The original Asuras could not have been that powerful. But even if they allowed Awakened to wield the power of masters, or allow mundane people to wield the power of Awakened, that alone would be an inconceivable boon. Inti sighed. The original Asuras helped the Ash nomads survive in the Sea of Ash. They were golems that granted them power well beyond what they were supposed to possess. However, golems do not possess a soul, and they cannot wield the will, unlike all living things. So, how could a soulless golem help someone fight against the corrupted? Hidden in the shadows, Sunny nodded mentally. Humans possessed similar technologies, as well, the MWPs, the powered suits of armor the military used. However, these war machines lost their effectiveness when facing nightmare creatures above the Awakened rank. Inti shook his head somberly. The Ash nomads solved that problem in a crude, but effective way, human sacrifice. They killed their own people and trapped the sacrificial spirits in the soulless stone. Their design was flawed, since it could not be scaled, not without harming the collective power of Mictlan, at least. So, I endeavored to replace the sacrificial spirit with a living controller. Of course, that created its own problem, since the power of the Asura would only be as great as the will of the pilot, defeating the purpose. Unless, he continued the explanation, everyone gathered in the chamber listening to it with rapt attention. Sunny listened, as well. Beyond the walls of the ivory tower, the sun was slowly rising above Bastion. And far away, a different sun was rising above the misty waters of the Stormzea. Sunny was listening to someone there, as well.